Hey people, it's Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Recovery Houston. Happy Saturday. Just watched like the first half of the worst Texas Longhorns football game I've ever seen in my whole life. It was making me pretty mad. It was funny, I was yelling at the TV and my kids were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay." But anyways, jeez. So today we are going to have Michele share some of her story and answer some questions, and it's going to be fun. And so with that, Miss Michele, do you want to you can do your name and your sobriety date?
Okay, so Michele, I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date this time is November 17th of 2019. My original sobriety date was April 30th of 2013, and I did stay sober for 3 years. But like they say, you know, whenever you stop working the program, you go back out. And I had to do some research for 3 years, so I'm back.
Yeah, did a boy take you out?
Something like that. No, it was all my doing. I don't blame anyone for my actions. But it was hanging out with people who didn't work the program, you know. Getting in the wrong crowds and just, you don't need to go to meetings. Why do you go to meetings when we don't? And letting it go for that. Yeah, absolutely.
What's that saying? Gosh, my stepdad says all the time, when you sit in a barber shop long enough, you'll get a haircut.
Right.
He says that all the time. So where are you from? Are you from Houston?
Right, born and raised Northwest Houston.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So high school, everything.
Yeah. I grew up for the majority over in Acres Homes. And then when I turned 16, my mom thought she was going to move me on the other side of 290 to HISD to get me away from the drugs. That didn't work.
How early were you when you started using?
So on my own, I started actively using around 12. I was introduced to drugs and alcohol really young, much younger than that. So by the time I was 12, I was like, well, this is the thing to do. And I kind of circled to the older people and ended up using and selling and whatever they needed me to do at that age.
Did your family use? Like, because I come from a family of addicts.
Right, no.
And I was just like normal. Like, I just thought everyone did drugs.
So, well, my mom drank, or drinks, and she was always at work, you know, and my sisters are 8 years older than me, so they had moved out of the house, and one of the men that my mom was dating was into drugs. So, yeah, it was kind of normal for me, and she was, like, never home, so I pretty much did what I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have that structure, right?
Mm-hmm. How are your sisters in recovery? Or
no.
Normies?
They're normal, you know? I don't know that it runs in the family, or maybe they saw something in my mom and they didn't want to repeat her behavior, but they both have healthy, normal lives, you know?
Okay. So what things this time have you felt have benefited you during your recovery process?
So for me...
Did you go to treatment or anything like that this time?
No, I have never been in treatment. I had a friend of mine that was in the program that originally introduced me. And then this time around, my 14-year-old, he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, Mom, you're not a bad mom, but I sure did like you better when you were sober." You know, so I brought my ass back. You know, it was all just, I had to do it. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, though, that you were able to do it just going to meetings.
It's hard.
Yeah, but that's pretty. I have to be, like, sat down and locked up someplace.
Well, you know, and I have that little bit of jealousy, right? Whenever I hear people that go to recovery or they go to, like, treatment facilities or sober living, and I'm like, man, I didn't have that to me, it's a luxury, right? I know they don't feel that way, but yeah, no, I toughed it out and I did detox on my own, and you know, it is what it is.
Wow, kudos to you. How do you think recovery has impacted you, your family, and your choices? Because your place is like the sober hangout place now.
Right. So COVID happened, right? And a lot of the places shut down. So I did open my home and started having meetings there, which it benefits me quite a bit because I've always, like, one of my biggest character defects is, like, I don't want to be alone, right? So now I have this abundance of amazing friends, and people come to my house all the time. And the boys, I have teenagers, and they see the way that people behave, right? So they kind of pick up on that. Like my youngest, he comes out of his room one day after throwing a hissy about something. He's like, I got to make an amends. That's what we do, right? And I'm like, so it does. Just being around people that work a program, it rubs off on even people who have no desire to drink or use, right? Normies.
Needs to run off on my 17-year-old if you're watching this. Jeez. And yeah, party at your house later, right? So.
Yes. I am doing a meeting at 7 at the house and fellowship after, And my house is always open to anybody who is sober, right? As long as you're not drinking or using that day, we welcome you to come. We have the whole chips. We do a meeting. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you obviously probably think recovery has helped you.
Absolutely.
Made you feel better about yourself?
Yeah, that it's brought me, I'd say out of my shell, but I was always kind of a party person, center of attention type of person. But it's brought me that peace that not everything is about me, and I can be more understanding for someone else, right? So I may have plans to go do something not related, and then something related comes up, and I get to be here for you guys, It does. It brings me like a sense of joy.
Which is fun. I love it. It's not all about me. I had a guest who, and he was like, I just really could not believe, like, it really was not all about me.
I feel that.
And he's like, if people just do what I said, like, I would have been fine. I'm like, yeah, I think it talks about that in our literature, actually.
Yeah, I totally feel that.
So, and you brought up COVID, too, so I always like to ask people this. How do you think COVID has affected the recovery community?
Ooh, that's a hard one, really. As far as them shutting down the clubs, I really did not approve of that. Although it benefited me quite a bit because, my house is the recovery house now. I think that everybody just needs to let everybody live. If you want to wear your mask, wear your mask. If you want to go to meetings, go to live meetings. If you want to stay home and do Zoom, please stay home and do Zoom. But the judgy and the politics behind it, that's the only thing that really gets me. Yeah. It's like it's caused a lot of controversy in the rooms.
Yes, it has. Like one place I heard finally is back open, and so after Post Oak opened, I was like, man, why is this other place not open yet? Spring Branch. And they're finally back open. Yay. I wish they would have been open sooner.
Right.
But I think it's just hard for people, right? Because for a long time we couldn't go to meetings. And I'm not a big fan of Zoom meetings. I'm sure they work for somebody. Like for some people, I just don't like them.
Right.
Because I really like that whole fellowship, right? Like before and after the meetings.
I need a hug.
Yeah, I like that. Like just getting to hang out. And then, when you could start getting alcohol delivered.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, okay, so we're going to isolate a group of people. And now make access easily accessible to them. Like, that just did not make a lot of sense at all to me. So yeah, I'm happy some places are back open. What has been the hardest part of recovery for you?
It's not all about me. That's it. I'm constantly working step 3. They say you work the 12 steps, you get sponsees. Sure. You do that, but you have to continuously give your will and your lives over to the care of God, and I'm one of those, I want things to go my way. I want everything in a nice little package, and it just doesn't work out like that. So the hardest thing for me is constantly letting go, right? Constantly just, people are going to do what people do. All I can do is be available, right? So that acceptance there, that's going to be the hardest, what I'm doing now.
That is hard. Yeah, it is. What's been your favorite thing about recovery?
The fellowship.
The fellowship.
Absolutely.
She didn't have to think about that one. Some
no.
I don't know. And I'm like,
no, I have this group of friends. I would have felt I'm too old to hang out with these people. Oh, well, they're not going to like my house because it's it's an old house, it needs work and stuff. And that automatic, we have something in common that brings us close. When someone needs me, I'm there. When I need someone, they're there. I have people, like I said, I would have never been oh my God, this is my best friend, right? But I have those people now, and it's amazing.
That's funny. I used to I told Daniel a couple times, I'm like, I think I'm too old for the young people's meeting at Post Oak. right? Because I'm like 36. I'm like, I'm sure there's like some cutoff or something, right?
Believe me, no. I used to say the same thing. My first bout of sobriety, I worked the coffee bar over at Post Oak when it was at Northwest Mall. And I worked Sunday nights for the young peoples. And I was like, never. I'm not going to do it. They're like, now. And then COVID happened. And now it's like, that's where all my friends are. Yeah. You know, so before the meeting, we'll all go out there and throw footballs in the parking lot and hang out. And I'm young again at 39, partying with the young folks. Love it.
How do you think others could benefit if they decided to get sober and get into recovery?
Well, you know, it's alcohol and drugs was a symptom, right? There was something wrong with me. There is something wrong with me. Like, I'm not cured. And that's the thing, you know, just getting sober isn't enough, right? So we go through our lives, whatever led us down that path. And it doesn't discriminate, right? It'll go after somebody from this poverty level, somebody that's got lots of money. It doesn't. So whatever led you there, and that's the thing that recovery does, is it shows you how to live differently. You know, and I'll tell you, honestly, I think normal people should do the program.
No, they should.
Like,
a class in high school or something, seriously.
Absolutely.
Or it's a 12-step program. Have your views or opinions on addiction changed since you've been in recovery?
Yeah. You know, I am, like I said, I grew up in alcoholism. Like, I thought that was how to live. You know, when I was young, I would yell, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, let's party. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. You know, I didn't realize that this was an addiction. It's a disease, right? I didn't know these things. I was highly educated whenever I came into the rooms. You know, I hear some normal people say that using and drinking is a choice, and people with strong willpower should be able to give it up. You know, and that may be true for normal folks, right? But for us, it's not. And I had to learn, you know, I had to read the doctor's opinion, especially the second time coming into the program, and really get down to, I cannot drink normal. I cannot use normally. I am going to get out of control. And that's something that it's going to be forever, you know? Mm-hmm. So definitely, you know, it went from being like it's cool, this is how you're supposed to live, to, wow, this is a bad thing, and it's an addiction that I get to work on, right? And I get to grow. So
what do you think is going to happen if they ever legalize marijuana? Right? Because alcohol is legal, right? You can get it everywhere. But us that are alcoholics choose not to use it. So what's going to happen, you think, when Texas is like, you know, let's legalize pot?
I don't know. I've actually had this conversation before, right? So, and how will it affect the recovery community? Yeah. Because we know that people go to psychiatrists, people who need medicine are, you know, we tell them to do what their doctor says.
To take your medication.
Yes. Right. So how will it change? That's I ponder that all the time. I don't know. For me, I know that if I smoke a joint, which is never really, I could take it or leave it, it's not my drug of choice. If I smoke a joint, I'm going to go get drunk, and so forth and so on, right? So I think that's going to have to be up to the individual and their doctor and their sponsor, you know? It does kind of worry me. I don't know.
That'll be crazy. Do they have like a Pot Smokers Anonymous? Is that a thing?
There actually is.
Is there really? Okay, well, we're probably going to have a lot more of those in the Houston area. Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even know that. Do you think there could be more resources available for people that are in recovery? Like, do you think there's enough resources out there for people?
So, you know, this question's kind of hard for me to answer because I don't know a lot about treatment and a lot about facilities, as I didn't go to those. I will say that some of the things that I've heard over the past few months tells me that, yeah, there should be some more stuff and some more, like, obtainable financially. But again, without me being fully educated, I'd hate to say something I don't know, right?
Did you not go to treatment because of financial, like you couldn't afford treatment, or is it because you have kids?
Because I have kids. So, yeah, I have kids. I was fortunate not to lose my job. Right? And it's just me doing it. So my responsibilities told me that I needed to take care of what I need to take care of and take care of myself as well. You know, which if I wouldn't have come into recovery, I probably would have been forced into treatment anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just one of those lucky ones that had a friend in the program.
Dude, that's awesome. Let's see. So if you were to keep doing what you're doing now, where do you see yourself in 6 months from now? Because you have, 10 months sober right now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I'd like to say that I'd be like white picket fence in it, but I mean, in all honesty, I'm hoping I've got some things at home with the boys that I need to take care of, but I'm hoping just to continue what I'm doing, to branch out the network and to keep doing the fellowship. No, that's not the only thing. Yes, I still get to do my prayers. Yes, I still have to meditate. But being here for the people that actually need somewhere to go, especially with everything shut down and you can't go party here or go do that there, and showing people that there's a way to live. I don't know if I'll be doing this in 6 months, because when you make plans, God laughs. But I don't look for much to change as far as my spiritual growth, right? And me being more open to you guys, the people in recovery.
Are your kids doing online school?
Yes.
How's that been?
I guess it's fun. My 16-year-old, he's pretty much a gamer, so we don't talk unless I force him. But they both have their own laptops. They sit in their own rooms. They get the work done. I come home at lunch, check on them, and then I come back at 5, and from what I know, everything's cool. My oldest wants to stay virtual. My youngest wants to he's just started 9th grade, and he got accepted to a culinary arts school. Okay. So he's ready to get on campus and get in the restaurant and start learning. So I'm going to ultimately let them make the decisions unless HISD makes it for me.
Okay. Come on, school. I'm ready for mine to go back. What if you had to pick a step? What step did you find the easiest or you liked the best? Was there one that you're like, check? Yep, that's
step one.
Step one.
Yeah. I am powerless over people, places, and things. And my life was certainly becoming unmanageable, right? But I believed that even when I was using. Whenever I went back out this second time, I was seeing a guy and I'd black out and drunk, like we do. And the next day he'd be like, you would sit there and say that you're killing yourself. And then once I got into recovery, back into the program, it's like I had to call him even though we broke up. And I'm like, it wasn't that I was gonna kill myself. That's what I was doing, right? Because after 3 years of being in AA and knowing, right? And so it's one of those realizations that I've always kind of known that was killing me, right?
What's that saying? AA will mess up your drinking, right? Like the knowledge of AA will mess up your drinking.
Something like that.
What step was the hardest for you? Because you're sponsoring people, so you've worked all your steps, right? First
step 11.
Okay.
Meditating, sitting still, right? I'm always on the go. I always want to be around people. So actually taking the time to shut up and listen, it's something that I told my sponsor when I came back into the rooms this time that I didn't fully do the first time. I did not stop. So she had me work on step 11 for a couple of months. And I still have to, getting closer to my higher power is something that I struggle with because I don't take the time to just stop and get that. My God consciousness comes whenever I'm right about to do the wrong thing. It's like, hey, why don't you call your sponsor? Or one of my many friends that'll tell me and call me on my shit, right? So
what was 2 and 3 like for you? Because a lot of people, those are usually the ones they have a hard time with, right? Because some people are really mad at God, or they've got these resentments, or they don't believe in Him at all, or she. How are those for you, 2 and 3?
So this time around, it was a little easier. The first time I was really mad at God because my fiance had died in a car accident. And I spent the next 4 months after I got out of the hospital, screaming at God and Jim for leaving me behind. And working the 12 steps the first time really brought me to understand that they left me here for my kids. There's a blessing in me being here, right? I wasn't, so whenever I came back this time, I know that if I give it to God, He can restore me to sanity. And I'm not just talking about sobriety, y'all. I'm talking about everything, But like I told you earlier, I still struggle with step 3 on a daily basis. Not whenever it comes to sobriety because I don't want to drink or use, but the lives part. My will and my lives, right? So this time it was easier. I do believe in God.
I believe that there was a man named Jesus, non-denominational. So I think I have it a lot easier than most people.
Do you go to church or anything?
We did.
Well, when they were open, right?
I've never been big into church because I don't believe in a lot of things that the Bible teaches, right? I did find an LGBTQ church, and my son and I were going. It was amazing. He started crying our first visit and said, I finally feel like God will love me for who I am. And that did something for me. That just...
Dude, that's cool. That's in Houston?
Yeah. I'll tell you about it. But yeah, they're not open yet. Actually, one of the pastors there passed away because of COVID.
Oh, wow.
But they are very into, they even march in the parade, the Pride Parade. It's an amazing place. So once they open up, I'll be right back over there.
Dude, that's really awesome. Hayden would probably be interested in that. So what's your family life been like since you got sober? Like, do you have a relationship with your mom and your sisters and stuff?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went to my brother-in-law's 50th birthday party last night. Oh, so
at a bowling alley or something, right?
Yes. My sister got him a dancer. It was great. Because of COVID, we haven't hung out much. This is the first time I've seen them since all this. But we talk. My sisters have always been there to support me. And they've both been with their husbands since I was a little girl. I look at my oldest brother-in-law, which is his birthday, kind of as the only father figure I've ever really had in my life, which they're strict. He'd put his foot in my butt when I was messing up. But I have that relationship. My mom is in Waco. She's an amazing woman. Anything that's happened in the child, she is... I'm really grateful to have her. She is the reason that I'm able to hold down a 3-bedroom house. She is the reason that I can give my kids the little bit of spoiled that I give them. So I'm very grateful for the family that I have.
She lives in Waco?
Yeah.
How'd she get to Waco? Not many people live in Waco.
That's where she's from.
Oh, okay.
She moved into her mother's house. She moved out of the house I'm in because I was 32, and she's like, well, I'm moving out because you never will. And she left me and the boys there and moved into her mom's house.
Okay. That's awesome. So how do you think, let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to, okay, here we go. So where do you think you'd be now had you not gotten sober the first time?
Oh,
or the second time, I mean.
So if we go back to the first time, I will say that the 3 years of me going back out would have been a lot worse. I would probably be in the hospital somewhere or would have been arrested and forced into treatment. Like I said, I was blessed that a girl from high school came to me, and I was laid out on the couch. I couldn't even walk my kids around the corner to elementary school. It's a long time ago. And she showed up, and I used to party my ass off with this chick. And she says, hey, I'm doing this now. Come do this. So if I wouldn't have done it there, I'm sure that I would have probably ended up in another accident or so forth and so on. This time around was a little easier. Like I said, I had that AA in me. And when I started blacking out, there had been like a handful of times where I went overboard. And they would have to tell me what I did the night before. And the realization that I was driving again while drinking, even though the accident had happened so long ago. Where would I be? I would be probably in jail or in the hospital. I did do 5 days in the hospital for, they called it IBS, and I blame Taco Bell, right? Which I still don't eat Taco Bell. However,
Damn Taco Bell.
I will tell you that since I've quit drinking, I haven't had those stomach problems, so my health was deteriorating. I'd be not here, that's for sure. And I've had somebody ask me before, because the night that Jim passed away, I was blacked out drunk. I don't know what happened. And I question that. It's one thing that really, I'm doing a second, fourth step over some of these things because I haven't fully accepted. I don't know what happened that night. Was I really passed out, which is what everybody believes because I lived through a crushed car, or did I do something? Did I say something? Did I act out in a certain way? And one of my friends says, if God wanted you to know, you would. And if you were somewhat at fault, would you be sitting here with a group of sober people? And that just got me. I was like, that is the biggest, eye-opening statement that anybody could have made to me. And then again, I have a relationship with his daughter. She doesn't blame me for anything, and so I just have to keep counting my blessings there, right?
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So, do you think others' opinions of you have changed since you've been in recovery?
It's none of my business what other people think.
That is a very recovery
I don't know.
driven answer right there, man.
I really don't know. I'd like to think so. I'd say that Samantha and Jim's daughter and I have gotten a lot more closer. I'll actually take the time to drive out to see her, which I wouldn't have before because I would have been too drunk to drive out there to see her. I know my kids' opinions have changed. Like I said, part of me coming back into the program was my son looking me dead in the face and saying, "Hey, I liked you better sober." I'm like, I did too. Let's be real. So I don't know. I kind of just let that.
If you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
Go to AA.
Go to AA?
Yep. I would have, Alateen, I should have started there. Maybe be open and tell people what was going on in my childhood. Not be so shh, keeping the secrets, that it's not okay to be taught certain things so young, right? It depends on how far back we go.
Okay. If you could tell your future self anything, what would it be?
Don't let up on the program. Do not go back to, and that scares me because I had 3 years, a little over 3 years, man. And I went to the beach and there was a 2-hour wait at Bubblegum Shrimp, and I told my 6-month husband, I was only married for 6 months, I'm like, just get a margarita. You can sit here, we can wait. And he bought 2, and I wouldn't have drank that if I would have still been going to meetings. If I would have still been working with other women, it wouldn't have happened. So what I have to tell my future self is to go to meetings as much as possible. Stay hooked into the fellowship.
And you are working, you sponsor people. How's that been going?
Pretty good. Yeah, people are going to do what people do. Mm-hmm. And when they're ready, I'm here. I limit myself. I have 2 girls right now. But with the boys at home and the full-time job, 2 is my limit for now until they get up in their steps. But I really enjoy it. I enjoy the fact that people can call me, and not just the women that I sponsor, but other women in general. I love being just the ear. And it used to not be that way. I used to be like, well, this is what I did today.
Are you going to that Halloween thing at Posto? Is that going to be a costume thing or just...
I don't know. I saw it posted on the thing. I haven't really gotten into it because Halloween is my favorite holiday. Mm-hmm. But also I hear that the Pride Parade may or may not be on Halloween.
Really?
So I'm having a conflict of interest because Halloween is on a Saturday. Usually I do it up in my front yard and scare people's children. But if the Pride Parade is there, I have to be of service to my son and do that. So Halloween is all up in the air, and I'm not happy with that at all. I have no idea.
That's crazy.
Just gonna roll with it.
If there's not the Pride Parade, will you support trick-or-treating even though we have COVID?
Yeah,
okay,
sure enough.
Me too.
Sure enough. Even if I have to throw candy at your kids, I'm down.
So what would happen if your sons were using? Do you think they'd come to you? You think you would know?
I hope so. So, my oldest made the comment about moving to Canada. He's 16, so he'll be 18 and whatever. I'm like, the heck? One of his gamer friends is in Canada, y'all. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, I'm going to come with you, right? And he's like, well, you can't because you're in the program and I'm going to party. And I'm like, oh, hell. My youngest says he doesn't ever want to try it, ever. He would get mad at me whenever Chance, my oldest, would mow the yard. I'd give him a Heineken. And then I'd be like, you want to know the one? And Chance would be like, no, I don't want to be like you. Just straight up. So my kids do come to me, though, whenever it's other things in their life, if they're having troubles here or there. Ashton had no problem coming to me and saying, hey, Mom, I'm not into girls. I treat my kids as though whatever you're going to do, you're going to do. I'd rather be here and be able to protect you. Whether that's buying condoms or watching you get drunk and laughing at you when you get sick. Whatever. I really hope so. Unfortunately, I don't control people, places, or things, so I don't know.
Yeah, with Aiden's, I'm gonna graduate high school and drive to New Orleans and be a bartender on Bourbon Street. I'm like,
All right.
good luck with that. The couch will be here waiting for you.
Yeah, I told Ashton and Chance, I told them, I said, just know that if you ever do decide to try any of this stuff, you will probably end up like me. And it's just their personalities, especially Ashton. He is like just like me. He is the biggest 14-year-old diva you will ever meet. He's amazing. We're like best friends, but I know he would have that addictive personality. And Chance as well. So that scares me. I'd like to believe, like Chance saying, no, I don't want another one. I don't want to be like you. I'd like to believe that would continue on, but whenever you talk about going to college and hanging out with people and keeping up with my mom once told an ex of mine, we got to her house in Waco and he was throwing up because we had stopped at 15 bars on the way, and she goes, it's hard keeping up with an alcoholic, huh? I was like, thanks,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up with this. That was my mom's, like, big tell, right? Early on, it was the amount that I could drink at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just way before I was ever 21, she was like, I think you're an alcoholic. I'm like, no, this is what, like, people my age do. No, I was an alcoholic for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely a drug addict. This is a little controversial, but we're going to do it. So I was on Facebook last week, and I was reading some comments on something. And there was this lady, bless her little heart, who was basically making some very not nice comments about women that have addiction issues. Yeah, and I believe her exact words were, well, all women that do drugs are prostitutes.
Really?
Huh. Yeah, and I usually don't comment on a lot of things, but I had to, obviously, that day. And it just... So we're in 2020, and we still... Do you think that that's most people's opinions of drug addicts? Like, there's still this huge stigma of, like, they choose to do these things, and, like, they're terrible people, and... if they were just, like, their moral compass was right, they wouldn't be this way.
I will say that people who think like that will probably experience something with a family member eventually. I had someone I know and love was very judgmental about my life and the way that I did things, because I was wild as a teenager. When I was 17 is when I gave up the heavy drugs, but I kept alcohol and pot, right? So this woman had watched me throughout my entire life, and she judged me a bit. I mean, she was there for me, but she judged me. And unfortunately, she's dealing with someone who was given everything and was never had to do anything out of, character that's going through it, So I think that people who are meant to know what it's really like will. And I just have to say, let go and let God. Let them believe what they want to believe, because we're here and we know. Mm-hmm. Right?
And not all women that do drugs are prostitutes.
Word.
Put that on a t-shirt. Go find this lady. I'll mail it to her. So, obviously, I talk a lot on here. I talk a lot about, like, AA and NA. Some CODA. I've talked about that. And I do really believe in those programs. I think they help a lot of people. So the biggest issue I'm kind of having right now is I really do think there is kind of like this stigma around, like, addiction and things and recovery. And, one of the principles in AA and some other things is anonymity, right? And not to, like, promote things at the level of press, radio, and films. And I had a talk with someone else that's very engaged in recovery. And we talked about, like, if we want to break the stigma, shouldn't we show people that, like, it doesn't really matter where you come from? Like, you could still get caught up in addiction, right? Like if we're not like sharing things via podcast or Facebook, like there are those people that are really only going to think like you smoke crack if you're African American and live in like Fifth Ward,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, which I had a pretty hefty crack addiction for a long. Like I know lots of white people that smoke crack.
Same, yeah.
You know what I mean? I know lots of people that are come from really great families that have terrible issues with addiction. So how do you think like a good way to try to educate people would be if it's not in front of a camera?
So, okay, I want to go back to your whole thing about anonymity and press, radio, and films, because I did have a conversation before I came on here.
Oh, yeah, I've had some.
Oh, my goodness. And I believe and I respect our traditions. I do.
No, I do.
But my personal opinion is that we've come a long way since the traditions were formed, right? The way that alcoholism and addiction was viewed back then, sure, I get it.
Because it was like this super shameful, like,
right.
It was not okay to be like, oh, that person's an alcoholic.
Right, but nowadays it's like so many people, like our fellowship has grown in abundance, you know. Unfortunately, depends on how you look at it. I'm grateful to be an alcoholic. But I think that some things need to be updated, in my personal opinion. Obviously, I don't have a problem with this. I am who I am. I've done what I've done. And I am glad that they have a program that I can work to learn how to be a better woman, right? I think, again, that goes back to each their own, you know? But as far as people judging on doing this, or the fact that you guys are sharing this, or that I'm even doing it, you know, they need to mind their own road, right? Like stay in your lane. I'll stay in my lane. I'm gonna do me. You're gonna do you,
right?
And that's the whole like having meetings at my house and us not wearing masks and holding hands and praying. Oh, we got so much crap.
Oh yeah, I did too. Like when COVID first started, I did this like just random pop up. It was outdoors. It was at a park. Like literally, I took a picture. That like 6 people showed up. We actually did social distance in a circle. Right, and I caught so much slack for that, and was like, it's so irresponsible, and and I was just like, it's a meeting, right? And this was at the beginning. I don't think anyone thought that, oh my gosh, COVID would drag on this long, you know. And I was just like, oh, I was so over it, which I'm still over the whole COVID thing.
It's really funny because when we were having meetings when it first started, we had a group conscience.
People get really mad. Like people get,
yeah.
I guess it's a fear thing or something. I don't know. They just get very.
Well, so we were like, what are we going to call our group, right? And a friend of mine, probably somebody you know, he was like CRC, and I'm like, what is that? COVID Rebellion Crew. And I'm like, that's what's up.
So like our whole like preamble, it says welcome to the CRC meetings.
Oh, that's great.
Like we're gonna do us. You guys do you.
Dude, I love that. That's great. And just to clarify, like I do not, just in case someone gets rubbed the wrong way about what I said earlier, I do not have issues with people that are big supporters of the traditions,
right?
And their anonymity. I've had a couple people on here that we've really like protected their anonymity, and they had great stories. Like one of them, like as soon as we got done, you know, I told Daniel, I was like, this would have made for really like interesting video because the story was so good, and you didn't have like the visual of like us sitting here talking and like facial expressions and stuff. You know what I mean? And I was like. But I get it at this, me and Daniel talked about it because it's, people will judge AA if I am sitting here talking about recovery and I go out.
Right. But see, that's the thing.
You know what I mean? They're going to be like, see, it doesn't work. This doesn't work.
It works if you work it. That's the whole thing. And that's another one, my conversation, it was with my sponsor, okay? And I'm like, she's like, well, don't, you know, try to respect. I don't do what you do, but try to respect their traditions whenever you do it. And it's one of those, I forgot what I was going to say.
You said it works if you work it.
Oh, that's it. You know, like, yes, I went out.
I did. I am not the face of any 12-step program. I am just someone who was granted the blessing of coming into the rooms. You know, I'm just another face, but that's just it. Don't put me on a pedestal because I'm still an alcoholic. You know, it is our natural way of living to go drink or use. What's not natural is this.
Every time I've gone out, it was not because AA was not working.
Right. It's because I wasn't.
Right? It's because for like 20 years, I didn't really think I was a drug addict or an alcoholic, and I just needed to not get into legal troubles while I used. Right? And eventually, with all this knowledge, and I would take, like, if I just stopped getting arrested, I would be able to smoke meth like normal people. Right? Like, I really did think that, or I can smoke crack and not, like, pawn on my shit. You know, or drink and not drive, because those two for me, they went hand in hand for a long time, because I haven't always lived in Houston. I lived in the country, and you had to drive like 30 minutes to a bar, and then I had to drive that time home too, thinking I'm fine. And there's been some times I don't know what I hit, but I know I hit stuff. I don't ever think it was a person, thank God. And I was blessed that I never got a DWI, even though I was pulled over and had some great enablers in the sheriff's department.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Which were like, you just better go home right now. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
like drink. You're like, you lived in the
country, so you had to drive, right? And I'm like, I live in Houston. Liquor store is like less than 2 miles. I could have walked. But my behind got in that car
and we didn't have
drove,
Uber there. Like, I still don't think in Lampasas, Texas, there's Uber. You know what I mean? So people are like, drinking and driving.
Yeah.
But it was not AA. It was me for a real long time. And I did. I had to finally. It took me getting into legal trouble, and a bunch of it, over a span of, golly, probably like 7 years. Because I violated 2 probations, violated a felony parole. You know what I mean? Like, it really took my higher power being like, okay, you're not learning anything, so I'm going to make this very painful for you. For me to really accept 12 very simple steps, right? Because it was all about me for a long time, right? And I think I'm very intelligent, and so why do you need all 12 steps? We don't need 12. I'll figure out a way to do it in like 3.
Can I just run to 9 real quick, say I'm sorry, and start over again?
Yes, I have a problem. Obviously, I'm not going to write any of this down on paper, and I'll just make some amends, and I'll be fine. Which, clearly, it doesn't work that way. There's 12 for a reason.
You know, what's really cool is we can work those steps as many times as we want, right? Over all of our problems.
Yeah.
And so I go back to, like, people who don't have addiction and alcoholic problems, like, they should really check these steps out, because it is something amazing.
No, they should. And I mean, they were so smart, right, when they wrote these 12, because even though, like, you know, a lot of younger people, I'll use Aiden for an example, he's flipped through the book and he's like, this is so, like, dated, right? And, like, the language and stuff. And it's like, yes, it is, but these 12 steps have helped more than just alcoholics, right? Because most 12-step programs, and they have them for everything, for shopping, for gambling, for gaming now. It's all based on these wonderful 12 little steps, right? So, what does that tell you?
Well, that's what, you know, we have people that talk about,
nobody's been able to think them up better.
I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, it's all the same stuff, y'all. It's not what I'm putting into my body. It's the fact that I don't know how to live right.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, like, you talked on it, you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's kind of something, and this is just my opinion, that gets glazed over a little bit, is that I had other issues before I started drinking. Like, there was other shit going on that I could not deal with. And I was like, hey, I don't feel this way, or I don't think these things when I'm under the influence of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So I am just going to keep doing X, Y, and Z to not have to feel these things.
Self-medicate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was great at that. Until it stopped working and it wasn't fun anymore.
Right.
And it was exhausting, being a drug addict. It's like a full-time job. It was very exhausting. It was. People don't understand. Like, I try to tell my grandma all the time, I'm like, this was not fun for me. Like, it got to a point before I got incarcerated where, dude, I was miserable, and I still had to deal with X, Y, and Z plus like a million other things, and my self-medicating wasn't working anymore. You know? But I think sometimes we kind of forget, and maybe it's different for men than it is for women. But I really try to stress with the women that I work with, like, if there's something else going on, it's okay to go get help for that.
Well, see, and you had mentioned a sister program that I've talked to my sponsor about going to.
Get help with that too. Like, that's okay. Because I had to this last time, even coming out of county, you know, for 9 months. I was 9 months sober, was working with others, was doing everything that, you know, you're supposed to be doing. But I needed some extra help in some other places.
Yeah.
And got into a sister program and actually started seeing a therapist and was able to, like, work on some stuff. And so, like, that's okay too. That also does not mean that AA doesn't work, right? Because it's like, well, you had to go do some other stuff.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, because I guess
because it's a different way of wording it. Yeah, there's a different way of doing things, right? And I know a lot of people who can, and I'm trying to right now work the 12 steps of the program I'm in on some outside issues. But there is that, Coda, you mentioned it earlier, and I have actually been thinking about it. If this doesn't work for me and I can't fully release, and I mentioned some of the things earlier, if I can't fully get over this through the 12 steps, then I'm going to go to Coda and I'm going to work a sister program, because what's wrong with growing?
Yeah.
However you do it, make yourself better. You know, I'm all about it.
Yep, I am a supporter of those things. So what else do you want to talk about today, ma'am? Are you good? See, wasn't that bad, right?
No.
Wasn't that bad?
I'm still a little anxious, even though it's almost over.
Everyone always gets nervous, and I'm like, why? Like, you're just hanging out. Like,
it's called being an alcoholic and an overthinker. That's what we do.
Yeah, I'm going to call him out. There's someone in this room currently that's super nervous, and, you know, I'm going to have to, like, hide a camera to get his podcast interview. I know where you live. So no, this was fun. Do you want to do? You want to give any shout outs to anyone? Embarrass your kids on camera?
Nope.
No.
Nope. And it is the spiritual foundation of all of our traditions. Sorry if I said your name already. It's too late. No, I'm really excited to. I've overbooked today. I get to go home and grab a bunch of burgers and get to cook in for the fellowship. You know, and if you guys are not busy later, there's a meeting at 7 and food and hanging out after.
Yeah, today's kind of crazy. So a little update on Lucas. So I'm going, after we get done here, I'm actually going up to see him and take a CPR class, because that's something that has to be done. And we're taking his car seat up there, because before he can come home, he has to be taking all 8 of his feedings out of a bottle, which yesterday he had done like 3. And he has to, like, do that for 2 days. And then he has to sit in his car seat for 90 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, without any of his vitals getting all crazy. And so I was like, who's going to hate that? I'd hate sitting in that thing for 90 minutes. So yeah, when I talked to him yesterday about, like, maybe, you know, how much longer, they said maybe next week if he keeps rocking it. So that'll be fun, right? Trying to plan podcasts around a baby. That's going to be fun.
You just bring him.
Yeah.
You can entertain us. So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How would you have reacted to what you're going through with your youngin' back whenever you were using versus now?
Oh, so that's probably not very well. You know, I actually had someone tell me one time, like, I'm not a real addict because I didn't use during any of my pregnancies. And I was like, okay. I'm having Siri. And I think I'm in a much better place for this one than I was for any of my others, because, you know, I have Aiden and Aubrey that live with me at home, but they didn't for a long time because of my addiction. And a lot of people don't even know this, but I have a 5-year-old that lives in Dallas.
Okay.
A daughter. And, you know, after I had been sober for a year with Ava, and Pills were never my thing. And when I had her, they gave me pain meds. And I, honest to God, was just like, I'm going to be fine.
Right.
And obviously I wasn't. And when she was 2 months old, dude, I epically relapsed. I mean, just the worst relapse probably I've ever had. And she went to, and I was married at the time, and Jeremy's parents, live up in Dallas, and they wanted to take care of Ava. And, in the last 5 years, I've gone to prison and then spent 9 months in county, and just still was a train wreck. I'll almost have 3 years sober in November. And I get this whole, well, why doesn't she live with you, right? And, why don't you do that whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I feel that would be selfish of me.
Yeah. That makes sense, yeah.
Because she does not know me. I haven't seen Ava in over 3 years. And she's in a good place. She's in a good place with people that are not addicts, right, or alcoholics. And she's got a half brother and a half sister, and she really is in the best place.
See, and that's not respect. That's recovery right there. Knowing that it's not all about you and wanting the best for. That's amazing.
It's why don't you pull the mom card? Well, because I was kind of a piece of shit mom for most of her life. You know what I mean? And that would just be kind of a dick move on my part. And I think, when I got pregnant with Lucas, I did not tell my family for a hot minute. Because I was really expecting the whole, oh great, she's pregnant again. Right? And it didn't end up so great last time, and crap, what's about to happen. And then my sister got pregnant. And, it wasn't when I finally told my mom and my grandma. Both of them have been very supportive. And my mom actually said, she was like, you are not the same person now through this that you were with any of your other pregnancies.
Awesome.
And she was like, finally, you've got your shit together. So they haven't been tripping the way that I thought they would, and dude, it has sucked. It has sucked having to, first off, have Lucas 8 weeks early under super crazy circumstances, and having to leave him, that was hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was like, well, if he's breathing and stuff, right? We'll just take him home.
Right.
This lady's like, hell, we're no, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. And I understand why. And so, I mean, he's been in a very good place, and honestly, it's given us kind of time to be more prepared, because we thought we had more time.
Right.
You know what I mean? He wasn't supposed to come till November the 7th. So the day they're like, oh, hey, we're walking you to labor and delivery, I'm freaking out, texting people, being like, okay, his bed isn't even here yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's all this stuff. Ooh, procrastinators. We were not prepared.
You had a whole nother month.
I know. I had more time. We hadn't even had the baby shower yet, and I was just like, oh my God. And he was funny because he was like, well, can't babies just sleep in drawers or something like that, right? And I was like, I mean, they could. I was like, oh my God, we're buying him a bed. So no, it's been very different this time. Because even with Aiden and Aubrey, man, as soon as I got out of the hospital, I was getting high.
Right.
I was could not wait to smoke pot. And so it's just been totally different.
I feel that. With both of my kids, I was like, I'm not breastfeeding.
It's just been so different this time. And if I was so old, I might entertain the idea, right? But I'm too old, and Lucas basically kicked my ass.
Right.
This last go around. So, yeah, it'll be exciting to bring home.
No more?
You can carry the baby. So.
Mad respect on that.
Yeah, I'm just dude, the blood, I was so sick. So yeah, it's been an experience, and this was super fun, and you did really good. And yeah, so make sure that you check us out on Facebook, YouTube. This will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and if you're an Android user, Google Podcast as well. So check all those things out and like and share, and let's get her like 1 million views and make her podcast.
We don't have to do that. Let me stay humble, y'all.
And yeah, that's it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.